Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here once again with the Knights of Bretonnia, going to be facing up against the foul Druki, so definitely in for a wild battle. Let's go ahead and jump straight to the army compositions. Of course, I've got Luan Leoncoeur up on Beaky here. He's got the Ladies Champion for that regeneration, of course, as well as Sword of Corone, which is very useful in many situations. Minus 27 melee defense and minus 30 armor is great in an area of effect. He also has the Lion Shield for that missile and magic resistance, both of which are going to be pertinent against the Dark Elves here, especially that missile resistance. In terms of infantry, we've got a front line of 4 Spearmen at Arms with shields for that nice 38 melee defense. We've got them backed up by 4 men-at-arms with polearms for that nice armor piercing, and again, good solid melee defense. Grail Relic, of course. We've got a Damsel Lore of Heavens this time. I wanted to try out the Wind Blast and Harmonic Convergence. So we've also got 2 Questing Knights, and out on the flanks, 2 Grail Knights. I figured since it's not you're not as likely to be facing off against large targets when fighting the Dark Elves, being that they don't typically bring too many Cold One Knights. Cold One Knights can be decent in this matchup, but like a Hydra, for example, you don't typically see too much of that. So I figured it'd be better to bring the anti-infantry, armor-piercing type Questing Knights. They don't have a true bonus versus infantry, but they are very strong versus armored infantry. 40 attack, 36 defense, heavy armor-piercing weapon strength. Decent unit overall. And yeah, that's about it. My opponent has a crossbow Dreadlord, who's not a super common pick, but probably pretty decent, honestly, especially when you put him up on the dragon. Give him that high angle of fire, as well as decent combat stats. It is worth noting, his missile attack does pretty solid armor-piercing damage. He's got about 40 ammo or so, and he looks like he's opening up shots, doing some solid damage on Luan right out the gates. Front line here is going to be 4 Black Art Corsairs. They'll definitely cut up peasants relatively easily. We've got 2 Black Art of Nagaron for that armor-piercing anti-large, 2 Dread Spears for some additional anti-large, 4 Dark Shards, and single Witch Elf with Lore of Shadows. Looks like Melkos, Mystifying Miasma, and Enfeebling Foe. Both very, very good spell selections in this particular matchup. Let's go ahead and kick things into full gear, and we'll watch as the battle unfolds. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of running around with Luan. I popped that Lion Shield for that 44% missile resistance. Let's go ahead and take a look. In total, that puts him up to 59% missile resistance. Pretty solid overall. And I'm just going to be kind of letting my opponent advance, and then we're going to try and meet him up on the top of the hill here. Out on the flanks, we've already got a quick charge in with the Grail Knights, now going to be pulling back this way. A little bit dangerous since these Blackguard are on station, but I figured I could get most of my troops back in time. Honestly, probably could have just pulled immediately into a rear charge and used Blackguard Corsairs and then run through my own peasants here, but alas, it should be okay. We're getting the Questing Knights also charging up through the center pocket here, going to be colliding with these Blackguard Corsairs, doing a ton of armor-piercing damage. Blackguard Corsairs are an ideal unit for these Questing Knights to face. We're also getting the peasants moving in, of course. Luan's mostly just being a distraction tool at this point, just kind of keeping all of these crossbows occupied. They also are shooting at the Grail Knights on that flank, who have taken quite a bit of damage, but we are going to be pulling in the Questing Knights now to just inundate these Blackguard just for a moment. I probably don't want to leave them here too long. They will do some nice armor-piercing damage, though, on these Blackguard Corsairs and so on. You can see this Blackguard Corsair in the center pocket starting to take a lot of damage, and we're going to bring this Grail Knight up and around. I honestly probably was not the best on top of my micro. I could have brought it in a little bit tighter here, but that's okay. You can see that Questing Knight did take a ton of damage from those Blackguard. And of course, they don't have a missile block chance whatsoever, so the Dark Shards will be very good there as well. We just been continuously dropping that Wind Blast there. Another really nice Wind Blast over the hill here, just doing a ton of damage to those Witch Elves and other lightly armored units. It is going to rout off my peasants, unfortunately, but that's okay. Balance of power, honestly, is a little bit in my opponent's favor at this point. He's still got these big, healthy blob of Dark Shards, but this is one tip for newer players. You want to deploy your archers in a kind of spread out way, your missiles, and if you get them in a big blob like this, you just make a quick control group and at least spread them out in a line, because when they're in a big blob like this, it makes it really hard for them to refire. You can see all these units are obstructed by each other, so they're not going to be able to really get a really decent concave of fire here. The Dark Elf Infantry is holding out relatively admirably in the center here. We've been able to break one unit of Black Art Corsairs, and now charging through with the Questing Knights in the back line, going to be inundating this huge pocket of Dark Shards here. You can see very densely packed, and we're also going to be bringing in the Grail Knights as well, so just a bit of an alpha strike going down. There are a lot of unit models here to work through those, so they're not going to take that much damage at the end of the day. The Spearmen at Arms with shields, unfortunately, getting enraged by the Witch Elves, and you can see we've got some regrouped infantry coming back over on the far side. Balance power starting to creep a little bit in our favor as Lewin was able to get a hold of this Dreadlord here. The Dreadlord actually charged down onto the ground to face the Grail Knights, which I think is a little bit of a mistake because I can then get the support of the Grail Knights there in combination with Lewin. Lewin's going to be able to get some attacks in here, and the dragon is going to be routed off. So we're going to just have Lewin go ahead and chase the Dreadlord off while we bring in the Knights to try and finish things up here. And see a ton of Dark Shards still here, and my opponent very well played using that Melkoth Mystifying Miasma to drain my Grail Knights. Looks like also an enfeebling foe here, potentially as well. Yeah, he's done a pretty good job of dealing with most of my Knights. One unit of Questing Knights is down, Grail Knights about half health. The other unit of Grail Knights is extremely tattered, and this other unit of Questing Knights is pretty low as well. A lot of the peasants are very low, but at this point, losing that leadership support is very critical. It's going to end up being that we can just kind of wear these guys down through sheer attrition at this point. You can see this unit of Blackguard, although it is a much superior unit of infantry to all these peasants, the fact that it's surrounded by all sides, on all sides by these peasants, especially the armor-piercing halberds, who don't have the best weapon strength. They do have pretty decent AP at 18, so they can, you know, cut through these guys if they're able to get that nice surround on a sustained amount of time. Another Melkoth on these Questing Knights, very nicely played there. Honestly, it's a little bit scary. Bounce power is pretty heavily in my favor, but really nice Wind Blast, just cutting up those Dark Shards there. And yeah, my opponent's done a relatively good job of dealing with most of my Knights, but just losing that leadership support there was a little bit key. Otherwise, he may have been able to pull this back, honestly. You can see some of these regrouped Dark Elf units going to be getting a nice rear charge here. They'll definitely do a lot of damage to peasant units. These Black Ark Corsairs are more or less made for killing, you know, peasant-type units. So it's not going to be enough, though. We should be able to finish off that Blackguard relatively shortly. Potentially. It actually looks like they broke a couple of units there, so maybe not. Yeah, you can see at this point we're just trying to clean up as much of the Dark Shards as possible just to swing the balance power more and more in my favor. Questing Knights out here just finished, or sorry, Grail Knights just finished cleaning up a few. These Questing Knights here are going to be getting on those Black Ark Corsairs there. You can see my opponent's collapsing most of his infantry into this pocket here, trying to take out the last of these Grail Knights. We are just going to pull them away, though, and now bring in Lewin. One of the reasons why the balance power is so heavily in my favor is because of Lewin himself. Still relatively healthy. It looks like a little bit of a mischarge there, but we are going to drop that Sword of Corone and all that, and then get him in here, as well as the Grail Knights for another nice charge here. That should be it for the forces of the Dark Elves. So, well played to my opponent. I know he said he was a viewer of the channel, so very well played. Even though I think he said he was a newer player, honestly, he played relatively well. There are just a few things we'll kind of talk about in the end screens here that I would change, but overall I think his build is pretty solid. You can see a lot of these Black Ark Corsairs performed relatively well. Just the one that kind of got ran over by the Questing Knights early on didn't perform. Otherwise, these guys did, you know, pretty decently. Blackguard of Nagrand, of course, did very well. Also, Bretonnia has a relatively hard time dealing with elite tier halberds, so I really like that pick. Both of them picking up XP chevrons, 129, 117 kills. What really cost my opponent, I think, was losing these Dark Shards early on, and the investment in the Dreadlord. You know, he ended up getting caught by Lewin, which is very unfortunate. You can see my peasants got completely massacred there, but 112 kills on the Damsel Lord of Heavens with those Wind Blasts can be very powerful in this matchup. 123 and 99 on the Grail Knights, 89 on the Questing Knights, and 59. So we got the damage done where we needed to in the Cav and with Lewin and the Damsel. So very well played to my opponent. In terms of his army composition, the only thing I would really change, let's go ahead and jump over here. If we go to Custom Battle, the Dreadlord with the crossbow is a pretty decent pick. Honestly, bringing him on the Dragon is quite a bit extra. It may be worth just bringing him on the Dark Pegasus. Makes him significantly cheaper, and you can still bring a lot of these you know, different things. I honestly would probably cut this missile ability. I don't feel like it's wildly useful. Foe Seeker is good for getting away and loose. You know, if you have him standing around with a bunch of other missile units, can definitely be strong, so we'll leave that just for argument's sake. Pearl of Infinite Bleakness, interesting. I actually hadn't noticed this item before. Gives AoE immunity to psychology. That's really good. Armor-piercing missile damage, it's an activated augment. If we have the extra cost, maybe, but something like this, I do agree with his infantry composition somewhat. I think maybe you could go something like this, and then honestly I would go with the Lower Shadows is pretty decent. So you could do Pit of Shades. Occam's Mindrazor is also going to be very good. I personally like Penumbral Pendulum quite a bit, so I'd probably do something like this. And then we've got a little bit of funds left over here, so let's go ahead and grab some Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. And maybe even a couple Cold One Chariots. Maybe one Cold One Chariot. Let's do one more Dark Rider, and we need some Witch Elves. And yeah, there we go, something like that. And the reason I do this, you could even do something like this and maybe even afford to. We'd have to cut one thing here, so we could probably go ahead and come in here and cut this loose ability. Or, you know, any number of various things to kind of cut some extra costs. But then we could honestly afford, let's see. Yeah, something like this, honestly. The reason why is the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows are mobile, so even if you just have them on skirmish mode, they're not going to get caught by the Grail Knights unless you miss micro. The issue with infantry skirmishers oftentimes, especially against a heavy cav faction like Bretonnia, is you just don't have the mobility to protect them. And with the Dark Riders, you don't necessarily need the mobility to protect them because they can stay out in front of those nasty heavy shock cavalry units. So something like this, I think, would be a little bit better of a fine-tunement of the build. You don't have the Dragon Breaths and the Terror, but honestly, the Dragon ended up losing out pretty badly to Lewin there anyway, so it would have probably been better to just avoid with the Dark Pegasus. He's a bit faster, so he can stay out in front, and then use that armor-piercing missile attack, you know, from the air. It still gives you that high angle of fire. And then, yeah, you have the Dark Riders so that they don't get caught. The rest of the army is relatively similar. We have a few more funds here, so we could play around a little bit, maybe add some more Dark Riders or something else, you know, various different things. But you guys get the idea. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.